lot of football talk to get to with Mina Kimes. I have in front of me an Aaron Rodgers statement from X that I did not expect to be reading today about Sandy Hook. We will get to that in a second. But before we do that, I have to introduce Mina Kimes because she was on First Take, and I guess she had never been on First Take with Mad Dog Russo before. If she has, I don't think she's dismantled him this way by way of hello. This is how Mina Kimes introduced herself, it sounds like, to Mad Dog on First Take.
Yeah. Chris, you, first time, long time, huge fan. This is one of the worst lists I've ever seen. The most egregious choice that you made was putting the 49ers at 5 for no football reasons, unless I missed something. In fact, the point that you made was that they've lost to the Chiefs because they made it to the Super Bowl, and they're largely returning the exact same team that was so dominant during the regular season that they got to the Super Bowl in the first place. In fact,
Bristol, turn that down, video. Thank you very much. It's a minute too long. You dismantled him by way of hello, Mina.
It's called the foot in the door technique.
The foot in the door technique. He is a great person to do First Take with, is my takeaway from today, because he is perfectly willing to stand under the hoop, and get dunked on, which is the defining quality of someone you want to be on that show with, especially when you have Dominique in your corner being your hype man, as he is like my life hype man.
I will get to the Aaron Rodgers statement in a second, but I will, instead of the heavy stuff, I will do some of the light stuff with you that we've been talking about this week. So please explain to me how the finances of the sport have changed, where Saquon Barkley makes 3 years, $37 million, 26 guaranteed, and Darnell Mooney makes 3 years, $39 million, 26 million guaranteed. It feels like that happened quickly, even though you told me 2 years ago when I was paying Dalvin Cook and an assortment of other running backs that ship had sailed and you can't pay the running backs anymore. I still find that shocking, that Darnell Mooney, the wide receiver position, is that much more valuable than running back.
What's remarkable, Dan, is that the Saquon Barkley deal was kind of rich. I was surprised that Philadelphia gave him that much, because Philadelphia, more so than any other team right now in the NFL, I think, is one where it has felt like any running back can come in, any good, average to above average to good running back could come in and produce. They were the best run blocking offensive line in football last year. They had, I've seen sort of the question to take, will Saquon Barkley take them to the next level? They had the 5th best rushing attack in the NFL last year. It could be better, and I think there's things to like about Saquon there that we can get to, but this was the team that has saved money at the position. They have not spent, premium draft picks there. So I was actually shocked to see them pay this much for Saquon, because this is one of only really 2 running back contracts handed out this year that had legitimate multi-year money. The vast majority of the contracts you've seen around the NFL, they're big names. We all know them from fantasy football. They're really 1-year deals, single-digit millions. And that reflects, I would say, a number of things that we've talked about. A lot of these teams now approach it by committee, so you have multiple backs sharing the load, which means you're less likely to pay one, like a bell cow, back all of the money. We've seen rookies come in and get just as much production. I can name, there's a bunch of teams that come to mind where that's been the case. And we've seen that by and large, when we look at run games year to year to year, the offensive line seems to matter more for continued success, which is why, by the way, we talk about running backs not making a lot. Have you seen these guard contracts get handed out? Robert Hunt from your Miami Dolphins making $100 million. Like, this is not nobody wants to pay anyone and everybody's getting cheaped out. It's like, no, the allocation of money has shifted as teams have a different view of what matters in the run game.
Are the Falcons and the Eagles going to actually get in trouble for tampering, Mina?
I don't know. I saw that come across. It's kind of with Saquon and Kirk. It's odd because the whole concept of a legal tampering period is so bizarre to begin with. So I don't really know when the clock on these communications technically begins, and it doesn't seem to me that there's any legitimate evidence. I suspect the NFL would just want this to go away, but we've seen them dock teams before for this sort of thing. Well, think about the Cardinals last year.
What was most surprising about the flurry of activity the first couple of days in free agency?
I would say like the running back contracts going quickly was really interesting because it wasn't a lot of money, but they all got signed very quickly and all switched places, which I think reflects one, the view of the draft. This is not a great draft for running backs, but also I think teams having like a specific desire for like types of backs to fit what they want to do and sort of the, so that was a little bit surprising though. And then I would say, the other thing would be those guard contracts were pretty massive. You're seeing, not a lot of big wide receiver contracts by comparison. I know you talked about Mooney and Davis got some money, but this was a very heavy free agency for those positions. And then the one more thing is like the speed with which this all happened. I mean, we always say in free agency, you got to wait for like a week, that second wave for the best deals to get done. I'm not so sure that applies this time. The speed with which money was spent this year was unusual. And maybe that has to do with the rising cap. And I don't know, but that took me by surprise.
Mina, which team is going to have the greatest regret for their free agency decisions?
I thought some of the decisions made by the Jaguars and the Titans were a little bit confusing. Washington to a lesser degree. Teams that had a lot of money coming into free agency, and you could tell just kind of had to spend it, and maybe there weren't enough good players for them to spend on. Carolina is another one where, like I mentioned, the Hunt contract, that was pretty surprising. Obviously, trading away Burns wasn't good. I did like the trade for Deontay Johnson. And I think that highlights like something to remember with free agency, which is the biggest spenders aren't the winners of free agents. Like we often say that, like when we do our grades, like, oh, who spent the most? This guy got the best player and whatnot. But, we've seen over time that that's actually not the case.
I asked you and didn't have an explanation earlier this week for why it is Jacobs was the running back in Green Bay and Aaron Jones had been pushed out. What did I miss there? Has your reporting the last couple of days done anything to help explain what happened there better to you?
It sounds like I asked some people around the league what they thought, that they just felt it was like a youth and health thing with Jacobs. Obviously, Jones, I mentioned to you, he came back fantastic. He looked excellent, but he was hurt last year. He is, I believe, 3 years older, which I guess in running back years is like, times 7 or whatever. And so I get they saw the opportunity to go younger at the position without spending much more money, because that was it's really a 1 year, $12 million deal. I don't know. It was one of I usually like what the Packers do, what they've done over the last few years. And that one struck me as still a bit odd. I loved this safety that they signed, Xavier McKinney. That was one of my favorite signings in free agency. And it was kind of uncharacteristic of them to spend big there. But that one I didn't really understand because Aaron Jones played so well last year.
Which signing was oddest to you, and where was something that you thought, oh, they got a bargain there? They were smarter than everyone else there.
I mean, the Titans spending all that money on Kelvin Ridley was a little bit odd, in part because of something, Dan, that we actually talked about with receivers, which is this is such an unbelievable draft at the position. And over the last, 5-7 years, we've seen so many rookie receivers come in and produce at a high level. My feeling is, unless you have like a true number one, your Justin Jeffersons, your Amon-Ra St. Browns, your Mike Evanses, I guess, I would not want to spend a lot of my cap at that position now. And while Calvin Ridley has been, extremely good, last year it was like he was kind of inconsistent in Jacksonville, obviously coming back from the year off. I still think he's a great talent, but to drop the kind of money that they did on him was kind of surprising to me.
Can you guys put up on the screen, please, the photo of Pittsburgh Steelers punter Cameron Johnston, formerly of the Texans, and tell me why he looks so much like Bill Burr, and if before his appearance here you had,
oh my God,
you hadn't seen how much he looks like Bill Burr.
He looks more like Bill Burr than Bill Burr.
Yes, that is correct. It's a little bit strange.
This guy doesn't look like me, Dan Le Batard.
That's a bad impersonation.
I'm
of Bill
trying.
Burr. That is a terrible Bill Burr impersonation.
Was that a Boston accent?
A little agitated too.
No.
A little angry,
Yeah.
pretty poor
No.
all around. Yeah, it
You got to
didn't
try it sometimes, guys.
didn't really work.
gotta do-
You
So
didn't have to try it.
Shoot or shoot.
Aaron Rodgers is on X saying, as I'm on the record saying in the past, what happened in Sandy Hook was an absolute tragedy. I am not and have never been of the opinion that the events did not take place. Again, I hope that we learn from this and other tragedies to identify the signs that will allow us to prevent unnecessary loss of life. My thoughts and prayers continue to remain with the families affected along with the entire Sandy Hook community. I don't know how true the reporting is, but the reporting is that in private conversations, Aaron Rodgers has questioned whether or not Sandy Hook actually happened. Here he denies that. What are your thoughts, Mina?
I don't have the CNN story in front of me. I do think it's. Was it reported in the story? Maybe one of you guys has it up. You can, because I don't remember the exact wording. Did the reporter say, and then I think they cited another person, that he said it didn't take place, or that he questioned whether it was an inside job? And
There were actors involved. It was on a CNN report, and it was allegedly something that he said to a CNN reporter in 2013 at the Kentucky Derby, I believe. Yeah.
But what he said, Jess, was it that it did? I don't think he said it never took place. Am I wrong, or was it? I just want to.
It's not specific about what the conspiracies were that he shared, but that he was saying some very bad things about it.
That's
right,
what CNN
implying that there
That's
were
not
crisis.
great of us on the reporting.
Yeah,
I don't
CNN
think that's
would-
how.
No,
I
I-
don't think
It
that's how.
said deranged conspiracy theories.
I bring it up because I think this is someone who chooses his words carefully. Do you guys disagree?
I have lost sight. Obviously, with immunized, we all sort of paid attention to how he was choosing his words when he chose immunized. But I have lost count of sort of some of the things that have been said by Aaron Rodgers. He just spent 3 hours on a conspiracy podcast.
Right. Which I mean, I think what was I'm glad you put this out. It's good to disavow the notion that it didn't take place. I think it's pretty telling that when the story came out, the universal reaction was kind of people saying, "I'm not surprised," right? Which is pretty stunning. Like typically, if a story like that came out about maybe anyone else at this point in professional sports, people would be pretty shocked. And then this morning, someone I saw an awful announcing transcribed like the podcast he did, and it was full of conspiracy theories, some more harmful than others, some alluding to, like, there was a quote about some theory about immigrants serving in the military and turning against America. I mean, it's worth reading all of them. I mean, the general picture is, and he says this because in the interview he talks about, I saw this in YouTube and I watched this video. He didn't say YouTube, I watched a video saying this, as someone who's just, been entirely too online, has gone down way too many rabbit holes. And as we've talked about on this show, those rabbit holes tend to lead to another rabbit hole and so forth and so forth. And you end up in pretty dangerous, upsetting places. But I think what's now interesting to me, because I don't think he is a particularly interesting person anymore, because all of this is pretty predictable, is how people react to him. Whether, like, what this means for the perception of who he is as one of the faces of the NFL, whether he can be anymore, whether fans can sit with this. Fans in New York, I mean, that was another thing that kind of jarred me about, like, thinking about Sandy Hook and this in particular, the proximity of it all. Again, he's denied it, sort of, he put out this statement. I'm kind of wondering, like, what happens next for him in the public imagination, setting aside the VP aspect of it all, right? Like, because this is pretty reputation damaging stuff. It should be. The comments that he's made.
The phrase setting aside the VP aspect of it all.
That's fair.
Like that being a normal thing. Mina, good talking to you. Thank you. We've reached a special extreme part in the space of insanity. Thank you for being on with us.
Can we count on your vote?